This is one of my favorite cinematics released so far, but there's more lore than I expected, so I won't keep you long. I made this intro last, so by now I have watched the Netcrit video. It didn't change my take, but gave me insights, and some points I disagree with. I will put those at the end of the video, but for now, here we go. Mbessa lies dying on the shores near a cliffside. I believe she's in an outer Noxus region for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the arrows her men are impaled with. Trust me, I looked far and wide for a depiction of Noxian arrows with the same tail design, but came up with nothing. But that doesn't mean they aren't Noxian. Noxus is flooded with imagery of Mordekaiser and the structures he built. I cannot recall another civilization or group of people that would make their arrows like this. The Demacians don't fit. Certainly not anyone in the Freljord. The first invasion of Ionia happened in Aurelia's childhood, so the timelines don't match. If we look at the timeline, it matches the period of Noxian expansion of Darius' childhood, when Noxus captured the city of Basilic. This was a time before Swain, when the previous leader, Borum Darkwill, looked to expand Noxus towards the Great Barrier. Basilic surrendered without a fight, so it would have to be a different city, roughly 30 years before the first season of Arcane. So we have a rough time period of when and where she was fighting. Borum Darkwill's expansion about 30 years ago. Now back to the fact she is dying. Wolf appears, black as ever, looking directly into Mbessa's face, until he reaches her and glances at her stomach. She's pregnant. Wolf's red eyes become trails that lead her into a vision world. We have gotten 2 cinematics with Kindred in 1 year. I believe they look different here because this is the Noxian version of the character, while the Kindred we know in game represents either the default version or the Freljord version. Anyway, I believe the main reason Mbessa has ever sent this vision is because Wolf acknowledges that she is pregnant. Is she pregnant with Kino, her son, or Mel, her daughter? We will talk about that later. Within the vision, we see her form in a pool of black fluid. It's very important that you notice how smooth her skin is. She doesn't have a scratch on her. This is very unlike Mbessa, and very unlike a woman who has seen so much conflict. This whole vision is a test of her spirit. We have seen many tests of spirit in lore, most notably Alawi performed one on Gangplank before the events of the Ruination. Gangplank goes to Alawi, beaten and pathetic after misfortune destroyed his ship. He begs his former lover for aid, and she gives him the best help he could ever ask for. Alawi did not expect Gangplank to pass the test of wills. Her god would force Gangplank to fight with every part of his soul to prove he was devoted to his destiny. Alawi's god is the god of motion and life. Passing her test grants you your destiny. Down the hall, you can see a black figure that isn't Wolf. But before anything else happens, we cut to probably the most confusing part of the cinematic. Mbessa holding a golden lamb as she is nearly trampled by these humanoid creatures wearing black, and the same creatures without black coats on stilts or in these white outfits. I originally thought these were separate creatures, but if you slow it down here, you see they are the same blue as the taller ones. This will sound extremely cliche, but I believe these creatures represent death, alongside Wolf, who we saw at the beginning. They also have the golden face coverings that the followers of the Wolf wear. At first, you only see Mbessa getting nearly trampled by these entities, but look closer. They are guiding her. She's pushed here. When this one passes, it looks back to meet her in the eye, which most of them do. They look her in the eye, and another one literally grabs her by the arm to guide her forward. I do not believe they are hostile. I believe they are meant to represent how her life has been led by death, and this is mirrored in the lyrics. What are they leading her to? They are leading her to their visibly blue counterparts. For reasons that become more clear further in the video, I believe these light blue skinned creatures represent destiny and her fate, and death is guiding her along. As for the golden lamb, I believe it represents her children, the one thing we consistently see her character have a weakness for. The death of her son drove her to Piltover to be closer to her last child, despite how much they don't agree with each other. I believe the golden lamb is Mel in particular. This is why I connect blue to destiny. This is clearly Mbessa getting a glance into her future. The description of the video is pretty straightforward. Mbessa sees a vision of what awaits her as a follower of the Wolf. Her on that throne is what awaits her. And what color is it? That same light blue from earlier. Now my favorite part is the introduction of Pantheon. For longer than I like to admit, I didn't make the connection. I figured he was just due for his skin, so here he was. But there was a glaring lore connection. Atreus should be dead. By all stretch of the imagination, a blow from Aatrox that carved stars out of the sky and killed a god should have killed the mortal host. But no, as the god died, the man lived. And what was his first move? Atreus spat in the face of Aatrox. Like Mbessa, the moment Atreus should have died is the moment his new life started, with his destiny soon to appear around the corner. I have to assume Atreus was given the same respite Mbessa was. He had to have been given a second chance at life. Aatrox left the mortal Atreus to bleed out, but the man managed to get himself back home to be healed. Once healed, he was guided to Aatrox once again, and it was then he realized his destiny was to get rid of gods, demons, and those who pose a threat to mankind. That is why Pantheon is here in this cinematic. Now begins what I see as the test of her will. Pantheon poses the challenge to her, and then they fight. Remember when I told you to take notice of her skin? Look at it now. Even when we see her in her armor, she's scarred. Look also at Pantheon's movements. He's not going for the kill. This is a test of willpower, and Mbessa does not stay down. She takes the scars and rises. Back to the blue entities. We open with this imagery, which has to mean something. I just don't know what. But it appears they have guided her and her lamb to exactly where they want her. This blue statue appears to symbolize how she is being torn apart, but that just seems too basic. I have no other interpretation. If you look around her and you believe that those black things represent death, she's literally being surrounded by death right now. The next scene could easily be overlooked because I myself missed it on my first watch. In this world, I get all my fantasies. She's saying this as she's willingly giving up the lamb to the skies. What does this mean? If that lamb represents her children, what does this action mean? Is she saying that if she gives up her child, she would get all of her fantasies? Is this the promise of the wolf? Sacrifice for destiny. Back to her duel with Pantheon, where she's visibly more scarred and putting up a better fight. But Pantheon is too imposing and knocks her down brutally. But what does she do next? Mbessa gets right back up. This is the most touching part of the cinematic. Her lamb is getting pelted by the very creatures that represent her destiny. This is something she chose. This is her sacrifice. We see her confront her most vulnerable moment when she faces a young boy, likely Kino, holding a lamb. I understand these to be her two children, Kino the boy, and Mel as the lamb. She cries as she understands that a destiny given by the wolf will keep death very close. Close enough for her to take what she holds most dear. Forging her destiny with death, the sacrifice and struggle lead her to rise again in front of Pantheon, who relents in his assault on Mbessa and walks backwards. Mbessa rises with golden stripes all around her dark skin. Pantheon disarms his shield and adopts a more inviting posture, welcoming her to advance. She has passed the test. Look at Mbessa's skin. What once were scars are now shining golden inlays and once smooth black skin. She has been repaired, rebuilt, and refilled in gold. We see the practice of repairing what is broken with gold not only in real life, but in League of Legends lore itself. Kari is a young Shuriman girl, no older than 10, who uses her clay bowl to fetch water at the nearby river. She takes a sip of the water when a large, imposing golden figure approaches. He assures the girl that he is not dangerous and just wishes to talk. The man in the golden armor asks if she knows the significance of her people and the city they reside in. He questions if she knows the traitor Zerath. That's when the conversation turns bad, and Kari looks to return home, only to witness the golden man summon soldiers made of sand to advance in the city of Saikal. The man is Azir, the Hawk Father. Kari throws the bolt at Azir and tries to run, but is surrounded by the sand soldiers. In a desperate attempt to save her life and the lives of her village, she makes a plea to Azir's humanity. It was compassion that finally allowed him to ascend. The act of bringing his descendant Sivir to the waters of life granted him ascension. Azir dismisses his soldiers, and they return to the sand. But before the girl leaves, Azir picks up her bowl and seals the fractures with golden sand. It's better than new. This mirrors the Japanese art of golden repair, called kintsugi. Mbessa is made whole again, this time stronger. Now back to the followers of the wolf. We see Pantheon, Swain, and Katarina to the right, so we know how they all connect. These three characters were meant to die. Swain was the general that took the Placidium. When you hear Aurelia yell, this is what she's referring to. Swain took the Placidium of the Navori and laid a trap for those he knew were coming to reinforce the Ionians. Aurelia was one of those Ionians captured in the fall of the Placidium, but rather than be bait, she broke free and unleashed the full power of her ancient blade dance. She killed Swain's veterans, she killed Noxians, and she severed the arm of Jericho Swain. As Aurelia paraded his arm around, Swain lay dying. On the verge of death, a raven approached to feed. Swain stared into its eyes and saw the reflections of the true evil strangling the heart of Noxus, the Black Rose, and the pale woman LeBlanc. He thought they were defeated, but he was wrong, and he had been betrayed. This was where Swain was meant to die. Swain will be repaired and reborn through demonic will, and aims to destroy the Black Rose for good. Now, to Katarina. As an assassin, it's no surprise that she has been close to death many times. The moment she gets her scar from her brother Talon. Long story short, she failed her father, so he sent her brother Talon to kill her secretly. Against all odds, he failed. She was just left with the scar over her eye. Another time was when she came to return the favor, giving Talon his own scar. Just before Katarina gains the upper hand, Talon is poised to kill her. I don't think that was the wolf-defining moment though. If I had to pick one, it would be this moment, when she's falling from the sky, following the events of the Major Rebellion in Demacia. She's escaping when the rider she kidnapped is shot, and Katarina falls to the ground. She believes she's about to die, so in her final moments, she apologizes to her father. She was never mortally wounded, because it turns out she landed on a massive slug. You get to choose which near-death experience you want this to apply to. We now know the members of the pack Mbessa is being invited to. It is strange, considering Swain's near-death near-death experience didn't happen until after the first invasion of Ionia. And at the time of the start of the cinematic, Katarina was likely not even born yet. She's roughly the same age as Mel in Arcane Season 1. Mbessa climbs to meet a darker form of the lamb half of Kindred. We see yet another blue item, this time being the sword. I'll talk more about swords when we discuss the lyrics, but it clearly represents conquest. As the lamb offers up the orb of wolf heads we saw earlier, we flash back to the golden lamb being fragmented and infused into the wolf orb. Whatever it is, it represents a choice. It's black like death, but surrounded by the blue that has thus far represented destiny. It's a choice to accept the visions and join the followers of the wolf, but there is no way to keep what you hold close separate from this choice. Atreus loses his humanity. Swain fights with the demon to remain in control of himself, and Katarina is only just now finding her place in life. It seems Mbessa must choose to risk her family. As she accepts, we see the return of the gold lines and a flashback to the realm of the blue followers, where a different form of Mbessa seems to be tormented by the fact she has just given up her child for the sake of her destiny. I can also see this being her conscience, but I'm not too sure. We then see her in these scenes embracing her destiny on the throne, finalizing her induction into the followers of the wolf. You can see her skin start to match that of Pantheon's, with the red veins upon her skin, and again we flash to her screaming to the heavens. Does she regret her decision, or is it the part of her that was never given a choice? It's not like she chose to be mortally wounded here. It is heavily implied that Mbessa from a young age was raised on the concept of following the wolf, so it's likely she would already know the prices that come with such a fated path to becoming what she was shown, sitting on the throne. Honestly, this looks like a recall. It would be cool if that were in fact what the recall looked like for the skin. Finally, we now see Mbessa in her fated form as a full member of the followers of the wolf. Flashing between backgrounds, we see her journey through this vision in her acceptance of her destiny. This is all triumph until we begin to get flashes of her child, and her head bowed as if she's falling into confusion or doubt. This is the hardest part for me to speculate on. Was the death of her child the price she had to pay to wrestle life from death and claim her destiny right then and there? The music video made it seem like in order for you to rise, you must give up your children. Let's say she refuses to give up her children and rejects these visions. How come she wakes up moments later and clearly lives long enough to grow old all the way to Arcane? Look at the lyrics. There's a hand on my throat and a blade at my feet, but the weight of the world won't bend my knees. There's a hand on my throat and a child at my feet, but the weight of the world, I won't bend my knees. The hand at her throat is destiny or death forcing her through life. And the things at her feet, blade and a child, are things she actively chose and she actively sought after. The thing is, Mbessa is one of the strongest willed characters we have ever seen. When she says she won't let the weight of the world bend her knees, this Noxian warlord means she will not be forced to these decisions. She will on her own choose the blade. She will on her own choose the child at her feet. There is a strong possibility she again rejects this path and somehow manages to bring herself back up to life through sheer willpower. Mbessa rejects the wolf internally, and we see him leave her behind. But why does the baby shine golden? To me, it communicates that this is Mel, and whatever gifts of fate Mbessa was offered transferred onto her unborn child. I initially thought the fetus at the end was Kino, but there's nothing to insist that this is Mbessa's first pregnancy. This makes sense if we go back to her vision of Kino in the lamb. Mel has not yet been born, so she is formless. And if we assume in this vision Mbessa knows she is dying, could she be crying because she knows she is leaving behind a young boy, or she believes she is leaving behind a young boy to die on the battlefield somewhere? There's a reason she pulls out the arrow. She is not one to be led, not even by a wolf. Mbessa is the leader. Mbessa herself will make the sacrifices. I starve till there are no more mouths to feed. Don't wash away my blood. Don't wash away my sweat. It's all I know. Don't help me up even from death. Don't wash away my sweat. I earned it. It's the only life I know. Don't wash away my tears. Even in the face of my greatest fear of losing my child or my child losing me, I will handle it myself. That sounds like Mbessa to me. All of this analysis before her biography is even out yet. I am ready to be wrong and have been wrong before plenty. I'm going to start with my disagreements with the Necrit video. He opens by stating that this takes place in Ionia, which totally makes sense why he would think that. And he's right, most Noxian invasions take place in Ionia. We don't see as many depictions of their other conquests towards Demacia or the Freljord. Here are 3 reasons it's not Ionia. Number 1, the arrows are Noxian. Necrit himself identifies the arrows as Noxian, but theorizes it's the result of infighting during the Ionian conflict, which brings us to the second reason. The timelines don't match up. It has to do with how old Mbessa's children are, because she is clearly pregnant. Arcane takes place in the past. We know this because Vi is not yet an enforcer, and Zaun is not yet independent. It's unknown whether Darkwill is still in power, or Swain is just recently taken over. But either way, if we travel back in time as many years as Mel is old in Arcane, we get further away from the invasion of Ionia, and much closer to the time of Darkwill's expansion. For reference, Irelia is a young girl when Noxus first invades, and is only a teenager when it it ends. The invasion lasts for about 5 years. Number 3. The most important cities of Dark World's expansion are these cities on the coast. They could easily look like this. This one is even called the Blood Cliffs. Now some of these were captured so long ago, it's said that Kled was the leader. Obviously that's a loose cannon because Kled is crazy. I can't believe I just referenced Kled in a video, but he talks about these conquests, meaning they are much older than even Mbessa. So by my logic, it's not Ionia. It's not Basilic because they gave up peacefully. If I'm right, it's one of these cities even further from Noxus Prime, but still on the coast. My next disagreement is his assessment on Pantheon. He claims this to be a form of the wolf, while I say it's the Pantheon we know as a member of the followers of the wolf. Do you see the difference? I am not saying that Atreus himself is trapped in this vision, but I am saying that this is not just a warrior, it's a depiction of Atreus. That's the only way it makes sense among Katarina and Swain. From what I understand, Netcrit identifies this child and the lamb as Mbessa herself, and the lamb is her innocence. I think the loss of innocence theme is so overplayed. For a character like Mbessa, who's so focused on her children, I find it hard to see this male-looking child as anything but her son. I think the lamb is Mel, so if this is the two children together, the boy would be about this age, as Mel is still within the pregnant Mbessa. Necrit makes some great observations that I missed, and I won't take that from him. You should go watch his video. But here are some things that he noticed that support my take on the video. When Mbessa removes the arrow from her midsection, the Medarda family crest is plain as day. Mbessa Medarda is saving herself. This one actually came from his comment section, and not him. What if death didn't come for Mbessa, but rather came for the unborn child? She was shot in the stomach after all, and the fetus shines gold. I like this theory. If there's interest in a follow-up video, before we even get the Mbessa biography, I will make another video with theories and observations, like the fetus glowing golden in the same way Mel's gold glows at the end of Arcane. There are so many other ways to see the cinematic, and I'm very ready to be wrong. Leave a comment, I read them all. And if you want to see smaller takes on lore, look out for my short form content or check the Twitter. See you then.